Welcome back, everyone. This is Daniel Murphy and Isaac Murphy, and we just want to go into the next episode of what we've been discussing.
Yeah, so the death and resurrection of our world. In the previous conversation, we were discussing utopia, or the new heaven and the new earth, as it says in Scripture. And then we ended with essentially what has to happen before we get to that place, before God essentially renews, restores, and recreates the new heaven and the new earth. And so I guess the title of this episode would be The Death of Our World. So you said you wanted to start off with a scripture?
I think it's a good idea.
Before we get going. So the first scripture that we have here is in 2 Peter 3, and we've got here verses 10 to 13. And look at that. The title is A New Heaven and a New Earth. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, in which the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the elements will be destroyed with intense heat, and the earth and its works will be burned up. Since all these things are to be destroyed in this way, what sort of people ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming day of God, because of which the heavens will be destroyed by burning, and the elements will melt with intense heat. But according to his promise, we are looking for new heavens and a new earth, in which righteousness dwells. So do you want to talk us a little bit through that?
Yeah, so we have to look at this and we have to, every human being has to accept responsibility for what we've done to our planet. We've all sinned. We've all done things we shouldn't have done. We've all had wastage. We've all had greed, avarice, envy, and we know that all marketing and everything's set up on that keep manufacturing, keep producing, and keep pumping this stuff out. When you go to third world countries and you look at some of the pollution and the rubbish and the rivers that are clogged with all this plastic and junk, and they're just killing themselves. We're choking, we're killing our planet. In Romans 8, the scriptures tell us the world is groaning under the weight of men's sin. This is a fragile planet. It's very fragile. It's like if you imagine an egg and you just kept tapping the shell of an egg, it's going to break. It's going to break and the yolk's going to fall out, and that's what we're doing to our planet. That's what we've been doing for thousands of years, hundreds of years. And the planet can only take so much. And as I said before, every one of us have contributed. Who does not have a plastic bag? Who does not drive a vehicle, whether it's gas, diesel or electric? We all contribute in some form or another. We're all actually destroying this planet. No matter what man touches, it pollutes. We can't help ourselves. Our body leaves a mark. You know this yourself. Whenever we rust. Our bodies causes things to rust. It causes things to decay. Because we introduced sin into the world, allowed sin to come into our world, we've corrupted this planet. God once cleansed the world with water, and he said he would never do it again. But he's got to cleanse this world with fire. We've reached that point and we understand that with atomic warfare and atomic bombs. We can understand how you could burn this world up with fire like that. So Scripture tells us, what did Peter see 2,000 years ago? How could he see that the elements, the metals, would melt with fervent heat? And it will even affect the whole universe as to what we're doing. We read in Scripture that man is going to annihilate up to 2/3 of the world's population. We can actually see that now with the event of these weapons that man has brought about. So we are responsible. We are causing this world to go into this state where And the only one that can fix that and the only one that can repair it is the one who made it, who is Jesus Christ. Some of the very best scriptures in our Bibles to read about how this will all happen and what will take place is Isaiah 24. Isaiah is very candid, takes us right through it and takes us through everything that is going to happen to our planet before Jesus Christ comes back to save us from ourselves, to stop us doing self-annihilation. Jesus is coming back.
Yeah. Do you want to read that now, seeing as you've just referenced it? You're talking about Isaiah 24 and it's in verses 19 and 20. Or do you want to actually... You've got it written here?
Yeah, yep. Let's have a look at just a couple of verses out of that.
So as we said, again, and this is what we mentioned in that very first episode when we introduced this series. And one of the reasons why we believe the Bible to be true is that we're going to flip between Old and New Testament, written by completely different authors at completely different times throughout history, and they are both cross-referencing each other. We'll see here in, what have we got here? We've got Isaiah 24, verse 19 and 20. The earth is broken asunder. The earth is split through. The earth is shaken violently. The earth reels to and fro like a drunkard, and it totters like a shack. For its transgression is heavy upon it, and it will fall, never to rise again. And that's essentially in verse 20 there, and that's the third line, is what you were referring to before about our sin and the burden that we have placed upon the world from our sin and our destructive tendencies. It says here, in reference to what the earth is suffering, its transgression is heavy upon it. And that's not a small statement. It's not like a light proclamation. That it's literally heavy. It says heavy upon it. And I was thinking before when you were mentioning about, obviously you said you referenced the flood in the time of Noah when you said that God destroyed the earth with water, and it prophesies in Scripture that God's promised the rainbow, which unfortunately has been what do you call it? Mental blank. It's been stolen and used for other groups which do not represent at all what God intended for the rainbow. But the rainbow was given as a promise that God would never destroy the earth with water again. But it tells us in Scripture that He will do it again, but with fire. Now, you could be sitting there and asking, well, and we hear this all the time, but isn't God a God of love? Why would He do that? Why would He wipe everyone out? Why would He threaten to destroy the world? And if we reference back to what we were discussing in the first episode, when we're talking about God bringing about perfection and bringing about peace and bringing about restoration for His creation, which He originally intended, that's His desire. His ultimate desire is peace with His creation and perfect unity. But why would He do that for it just to be destroyed again? So we're looking at now that the things that are to transpire are in order to cleanse it, so that when He creates the new heaven and the new earth, it won't be destroyed by our sin, by our own human nature and destructive tendencies.
So what we're looking at is, we call it the death throes of our world. When we read in Isaiah 24, you're looking at the death throes of our world, but they're actually birth pangs. So, and we need to understand that. So our world is going through a state of death. We're killing it. We've been killing it, particularly in the last century. We've been on this road and we don't stop and consider what we're doing. AI is the perfect example. I watched a podcast with Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson, and they were discussing it like we're just having a cup of coffee, and Elon said that AI is going to destroy civilization. And then he went to go on to say that if it gets into the wrong hands, it's all over. And then he went on to say, and by the way, it's actually in the wrong hands. The world leaders in AI are the wrong people. They are corrupt and they're just doing it for money. So he said, and it's not like a decade away. He said, this is just around the corner. This is what we are really good at. Man is really good at self-destruction. We're great at war. We're
finding new ways to kill ourselves. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But we don't stop. If we stopped and said, look, let's just take 24 hours and see what we're doing here. Man never does it. We're so consumed with our next holiday, our next cup of coffee, our next this, our next that, our next... When you go again, and I'll refer to the third world, and you look at how we are just strangling our planet, and we camouflage it. We put makeup over it, and we pretend with the green movement, and we pretend with this, and we pretend with that. There's only one that can rectify it, and that's the one that made it in the first place. That's Jesus Christ. He made our planet. All things were made through, by, and for Jesus. We have so brought him down to our understanding. Man doesn't fully understand Jesus Christ, let alone the Father. So, as I said before, we've contributed, all of us, to the corrupting of our world, to the polluting of our world. And it's getting to a point now where it can't recover. God keeps bringing the healing and the mending and the fixing year in, year out. But we just keep building and building and building. And now we've got 8 billion people. There's statistics that show that we grow enough food to feed the 8 billion people on our planet. We feed to animals so we can eat the animals. We just don't get it right.
We're not advocates for vegancy, but veganism? I don't know what it is. We're not necessarily. I love having a good steak and a burger, but the point essentially what you're saying is that God upholds His end of the bargain. God provides enough food. Yeah. It's our own corruption that gets in the way. Yeah, and it's our own it's our own destructive tendency. I wrote here what we were discussing before, that our industrial agriculture ruins the earth simply because of, we look at it and it's efficient, it's higher profit. Again, it's back to our own selfish desires, etc., etc. And we end up with dust bowls and food deserts because of that, because of our own destructive tendencies. Yet still, God provides enough food for the world.
God repairs.
Yeah. Because it says in Scripture that He is true to His word, and His creation is perfect, and so He's not going to renege on His promises, and so He still gives everything that we need. It's just that our own selfishness, our own sin, our own pride gets in the way. Yeah.
We so it's not God that's actually going to destroy the world.
We're doing it ourselves.
We're doing it.
Yeah.
So what God has to do, because we keep going deeper into evil, He keeps giving us more grace. The Scripture tells us where sin abounds, grace abounds more. So as we reach these levels and that, but we're destroying our world every time we go deeper and deeper in evil, we're causing more and more destruction to our world. And to give you an example, again, you take the egg. So as soon as we started exploding nuclear bombs, what were we doing to the shell of our planet? We're just tapping it with this hammer.
Exploding them in the ocean too.
Well, it's just,
yeah.
We don't stop, and we won't stop until Jesus has to come back to rescue us from ourselves. That's what He said. He said, unless He comes back, no flesh will be saved. They are the words of Jesus Christ. So He is the one that is going to return, save us from ourselves. He's the one that will then restore the new earth and the new heaven. Then He will bring about a whole new heaven and whole new earth. We will have then an existence that is beyond human comprehension or imagination. And the Scriptures tell us that God will be all in all. God will be actually our fabric, our being. And that's what he always intended. He wants in a relationship that is so deep, so intimate, that it won't be separated by the flesh. Our new bodies that he tells us that we'll have will be like the body of Jesus Christ. And that is an eternal body that, again, we don't understand, but that's the future that God's got for us.
Yeah. And as we discussed, we wanted to start with that. In the previous episode, we started with the resolution, essentially, and the outcome and the hope of the new heaven and the new earth. But as we're discussing here today, there are some pretty serious events that are prophesied in Scripture that have to take place, essentially, in order to cleanse, in order for God to renew and bring about a new heaven and a new earth.
So through the podcast, we will look at every one of those events. So what I've been able to find in Scripture, there are 35 to 40 major world events that are going to happen on a global scale, that are going to happen, are going to take place on our world to usher in the return of Jesus Christ. The Bible talks about them as birth pangs. So we will look at each one of them individually as we go through all of the podcasts in the future. And so people can be prepared and understand, oh, right, now that's happened. Now I can expect this to come next and that to come next. And the Bible gives us a pretty good timeline and a very good understanding of what has got to come upon our planet. So, and it's in the book. It'll be in the book that people will be able to get by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And we'll do the podcast and we'll cover each and every one of those in the podcast.
Yeah, great. So we've covered off on most of the things we wanted to discuss in this topic. You've just got here, just to wrap it up, I think you've got this really great little summation, essentially, the gospel in 4 lines. Did you want me to read that, or do you want to read that before we move on? It's got here the gospel in 4 lines, or 4 statements. All sin comes at a cost. There is a price that has to be paid. You can either accept the price that Jesus has paid, or you will pay the price yourself. And do a brief little overview on that, and we'll wrap up on that.
It's that simple. We've all sinned. We've all committed crimes against God. Who's going to pay? I don't want to pay for the sins I've committed. I did them, and knowingly I did them, but if I had to pay